respect that's written into the story. Respect is the most important thing you can give anyone. And when you're telling a story of someone else's culture, you've got to respect what's important to them.
As a producer who's working with Indigenous stories, but as a non-Indigenous person, how do these principles and the work of Anna, how does that resonate with how you work?
She stated everything very, very well.
Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. And I have a Muskogee heritage, but I was not raised in the culture, so I don't claim it. I'm not going to appropriate it. But I do have a deep sense of spirituality for the Indigenous culture because of my background. As a writer, I think as a filmmaker, you have to look at this from all the different perspectives. As a writer, it's your job to find out what stories are you telling, what do they mean to the people, what are the sensitive issues, what are the cultural issues, the sacred icons, the practices, the things that we don't have in our culture, in Caucasian culture typically, and I'm speaking from the United States, so I'm talking Native American, and I've done some work with the First Peoples in Canada. So I'm looking at it from Turtle Island, but I think this would be the case talking to any group of Indigenous people. Respect that's written into the story. Respect is the most important thing you can give anyone. And when you're telling a story of someone else's culture, you've got to respect what's important to them. Once you understand, then you'll know why the tomahawk chop and Chief Wahoo are offensive. So it begins to make sense. You begin to know.
We saw some beautiful footage from some of your projects. Can you tell a little bit more concretely about how you have collaborated with protagonists or researchers and these Indigenous tribes that you're portraying in the films?
I was very fortunate. I was invited to do some music videos for a Grammy Award-winning flautist, Jonah Little Sunday, and there are places in and around central Arizona that are very sacred to the Indigenous nations that live there. So I invited him to join me, and we took beautiful footage of some of these places. That was to support his music video, but it also shows up so beautifully on camera that I added it. The other story had much to do with, or the one that you saw with the crown dancers. I was blessed to have them to come and visit our set and perform for me. One of the things as a director, because I did direct that film as well, the elder that I was working with, and I always seek an elder to work with to get the information straight. The elder said, "Don't stop their dance. They're doing a very special healing dance just for you. Don't call cut. Let them finish their dance because it's meaningful." So I wouldn't have known if he hadn't told me, but I value that tremendously.
And you see yourself continuing to work in that space and do collaborations with Indigenous groups?
We actually have a slate of about 6 more Indigenous films that we're doing between Native Americans and First Peoples. And this is something that I want to continue to tell the story because there is such a beauty in the culture, the traditions, the artifacts, and the religion.
All right, can we segue from that maybe to Mike? I know that you have collaborated. Mike, you've been working in film funding for many, many years. What are the economic benefits or incentives of, enhancing or prioritizing authenticity in these kinds of stories, which I hate to say is actually a new thing. I mean, in mainstream film culture, we didn't really pay much attention to Indigenous authenticity. We just kind of built stories around these cliches from cartoons or storybooks from the past. So, doing that extra work, does that pay off?
Absolutely. I have an MBA in entertainment, so I'm very different from the rest of these people up here from the University of Southern California. And one of the things we look at is marketing these films. And it's important because the stories need to be told, but they need to be told in an authentic manner. So if the main target market or who you are telling the story about or for don't like it, or it's not authentic, then the press is going to be bad and it's not going to turn out well. So it's super important from a marketing perspective. And so as a financier and the CEO of Becket Film Fund, I look for that. I make sure people like Shelby are, following the organizations, talking to elders, and making sure that these are authentic stories, so that when we put them out there, they resonate with the target market and the stories are told, which is one of the main reasons that they would be greenlit by various people, First Nations people and others around the world. I think several 100 million people around the world. That's important. And then also from a finance perspective, when these beautiful stories are put together, there are advisors that can make them authentic. You have to put financing together, and there are a lot of opportunities for financing. The group that put us up here, they have film incentives of various sorts. Canada has wonderful film incentives, and various states in the United States do as well. But working, in regional offices of Indigenous and First Nations people, there are other incentives as well. And so I look for productions that will hire people, as you said, not just in PA roles, but in greater roles, and then provide training for people so that they can move up the ladder in the production side of it as well, and make sure that those things all work well. And that helps the production look authentic and be authentic, because there's more eyes watching what's going on to make sure it follows what you would want it to be for your people. So you've got national incentives, sometimes regional incentives, and then there are banks that will loan money against these incentives. So if you have a $3 million film and you have a $1 million incentive, you can take a loan out for some portion of that to actually get your film made rather than waiting to the end. And then where Becket Film Fund comes in is we put this package together, make sure the finances make sense, make sure everybody is going to be paid appropriately for their story, their directing, their acting, their production, and that sort of thing. And then the remainder of it is equity. So we bring equity to the table. And then we have relationships with major and mini major studios for distribution, and they're very interested in these films and these stories, because Disney was, that story was very successful for Disney. And when people see something like that, there is more opportunity then, and then everybody wins. People get their stories out, everybody who's working on the production, gets paid for their work and that sort of thing, and reimbursements for, donations can be made back to peoples to help with training and build training facilities and all those sorts of things.